All right, here we are. Howard and John show.
Hey, John, good
Howard,
afternoon.
pleasure to see you as always, especially basking in the northern lights. Do you have a Speedo on? You're trying to catch some green rays?
I've got doing a little ice fishing
Yeah,
and
you have earmuffs on.
earmuffs on. Yeah, exactly.
It's good. It seems very fitting.
I think the concrete bunker look was getting a little old, so I thought I'd shake it up a little.
There you go. That's good. I'm glad to hear. And
Yeah, and since the whole country has like the same four Zoom virtual backgrounds, it's
yeah,
not like it's like always using that one. That's
no,
how
it's great.
Zoom is.
Why
Because
not?
then you have San Francisco, and you have like the sort of celestial scene,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's some like beach scene, and
Mm-hmm.
then
Oh yeah, the beach. I've never seen a lot of beach scenes,
yeah, and grass.
but here you are,
Here I am in the
streaming in the
Aurora
northern lights.
Borealis. Yeah, here
Mm-hmm.
we are. All right. Well, that's
What
the
do
easy part of the show today.
you?
Now, on to the subject,
Yeah,
which
the
is
real subject. So, what are we talking about today?
we're talking about conflict today.
What about it?
I think just a general subject. There's so much. I have a high tolerance for conflict, and today I am a little shaken by what's going on out there in the world. And I'm sure we'll get into this. I am a participant in much of the ugliness, and I jump in with both feet. But even I am a little bit looking around this pool and thinking,
Is that what's going on right now? Because I don't really know. Like, I haven't really seen what's going on social media, anything like that. As far as is there a lot of violent language being thrown around, or what's going on right now? Because all I remember. So we can go into this, but
yeah,
the only conflict that I have experienced is the one that you and I have gone through, which I'm sure we can
yeah,
outline and talk about.
yes.
But what is it that you're seeing? What help me understand, help the audience understand.
I saw, and in one sense, I applaud him. In the other sense, I'm a little shaken up by it. Maybe about an hour ago, I came across my sort of feed where Steve Schmidt, who's he was John McCain's campaign manager when he was running for president, and very much anti-Trump, and he started this thing called the Lincoln Project.
Oh,
And the
right.
Lincoln Project, right? You know, the Lincoln. For those who don't know, the Lincoln Project is a Republican effort to remove Trump and support Biden and remove Trump. So that's not remove, vote him out.
Vote them out.
Right, vote them out, and or I guess maybe even 25 them out. I don't know, who knows? But they're anti-Trump Republicans, and so they called the Lincoln Project, run by this guy named Steve Schmidt, who was sort of attacked by Donald Trump last night or this morning, and it was just one of the many anti-John McCain, anti
Right. He's not a war hero, kind of.
right, all that kind of stuff. The same kind of thing. I didn't actually read that, but Steve Schmidt's response was brutal, the most brutal takedown
Really?
of Donald Trump I've ever read, ever. We'll link it in the bottom of the,
Okay.
of the notes here. It was amazing, and it really made me. In one sense I was sort of applauding, in another sense I'm like, this is where we are now. I don't think there was really anything inaccurate or undeserved that Steve Schmidt put out there.
Right.
But it's hard to read some of this stuff, and I think that the discourse is so terrible now, and so I'm a little shaken by that. That just happened. I just saw that in the past hour, and that's just a little,
So it was definitely it shocked you, or it knocked you around a little bit and made you realize, wow, we are no longer even close to being civil or
Right.
anywhere close to being cordial. We are at war with each other with words.
We are. I'm afraid we are edging closer to civil war. And I don't say that lightly. I think that we are going to have it. Now, I don't think that we're going to have civil war like, like we did
Yeah, 1800s.
155 years ago.
Yeah,
But I do think that we are going to have skirmishes, and that these things can happen in suburban areas and areas where red and blue lines cross. You're not going to probably see it in Clayton, Missouri, which is quite blue, but you will see it maybe in St. Charles, Missouri, which is Franklin County, or there's areas that those
a little mixed.
Those exurbs, what they call them, exurbs, and that's and I think that it's just going, the reverberations of what is happening now, that's going to be with us for many election cycles, and I'm interested to see how history describes what we're going through.
Yeah, I don't know. Definitely, it's going to be a couple decade run. I would imagine, before we get some perspective on this thing. But I definitely think that just in regards, a quick note on the Civil War thought. I think there's going to be a fair amount of civil unrest, but I don't know if there's going to be a civil war. I think that's just something wholly other. But
who would have thought we'd be where we are now?
Who would have thought?
I can't. You just can't believe it. Think about what we have. We had things went off the rails a year ago when was it a year ago during the impeachment? We're heading into impeachment? A year ago.
Yeah.
The Mueller report hadn't even been released yet. No one had any idea that a pandemic could hit. That you could have a president who's insisting on doing a live debate with another septuagenarian on stage live.
Well, not just that, he's actually
fully
contagious.
Infected with COVID-19, for which there is no cure, no vaccine.
Oh, there is for him, for sure.
And he's saying, I will do this. I'm going to do this live, or I'm not doing it. Like, he's just like, his line in the sand is, I infect the world, or we don't do this.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a
a lot of conflict
floating out there.
A lot of conflict. So what are your initial thoughts when you think of conflict? Or at least, how do you think most people would define conflict, and what do you think about it, especially today?
Well, I think that the first word that comes to mind is tribal. That we're broken into tribes now. So that this is the conflict that's happening now. That this is how I'm feeling now. Do you mean just the term conflict, or?
I mean both. I think that I think that we should have a neutral or even a positive understanding of conflict, because I think there's enough bias against conflict already. People never liked conflict. I think that's why so many relationships go downhill, is because people don't really have it out when they should have it out, when they don't really have real conversations about their deep internal struggles and their feelings about someone when they should. And so a lot of times we just internalize these things and we never let it out, and therefore it's never constructive conflict.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. Bottling it up is not good, but letting it out is also gets risky. There's a risk involved with letting it out.
Sure.
And that's why people bottle up. They don't want to I don't want to be abandoned. I don't want to be, that it seems like when you're angry, you can cross that line.
Yeah.
What's that line? That line is, I'm thrown out of the tribe, the tribe. Now, the tribalism is important because the tribe protects us. The tribe is the family. The tribe, outside of the walls of this, of our little tribe is darkness and monsters, and and so stay in and live, and suck up the conflict, or
But that's true though. So few.
That's how we're wired.
Relational systems or relationships have modeled positive, constructive conflict. Have you ever been in a relationship where there's been constructive,
No,
healthy-ish
because no, there's
conflict?
not. That's not even part of the language of relationships. Think about the way we talk, even with weddings and with relationships. Valentine's Day, with all these things, we talk about all the joy of coming together and all the companionship and all the you're my soulmate. I'm made for you. You're made for me. You're my one and only. But really, it's like that's the easy part. The managing the conflict is the hard part. And, we don't, there's, I think there's a few words in like a wedding ceremony, like, in sickness and in health, I will obey you. I think there's some language like that.
There is, yeah, there can
Not
be, yeah.
exactly modern, but I don't think that, I think that our institutions, the institutions that we built are reflections of our own tribal view of conflict, and which means suppress that.
Do you really think that? Do you really think like the institution of marriage really suppresses conflict?
No, I don't think that it does. I think that it's not the institution; it's the rules that describe it and that sort of kind of create that, or maybe memorialize that. So, marriage, weddings, the way we describe relationships. It's a very positive thing. We don't. There's very little language of conflict baked into the sort of few operating guides there are to relationships. Like we don't like how do at the beginning of a relationship it's all positive. It's all full of love and the chemistry is firing and all these things are great and then the first conflict comes in it. Now I've been on the planet for 55 years. I've had I don't know how many relationships, friendships, and romantic relationships and parental familial relationships. Every time there's conflict, the early, in these, I'm always surprised at the beginning when there's initial conflict.
Yeah.
It always comes at me as a surprise. It always hits me as a surprise.
Why?
I don't know why. It's like, why?
Yeah, why?
Because as I'm saying, we don't bake conflict, description of conflict, and management of conflict into the relationship recipe. It's a byproduct, or it is sort of some weird effect that happens afterward, and we don't talk about it at the beginning. Any match profiles, any online dating profiles, they have very little. If you read these profiles, there's very little description of how you manage conflict.
Interesting.
It's all the things I love, all the things I like. Tell me
how good I look.
How good I look. Tell me what happens when someone cuts you off in traffic.
Well,
tell me how long that sticks with you. How long?
Yeah.
Well, how long does that stick with you? What's the effect? How do you deal with having a difference of opinion with your partner?
Yeah,
which I have in my life. How do you
I think like for instance, like I guess for me, in my own personal experience, I completely agree with you in in large swaths of cultures, at least especially in upper middle class American culture. There definitely conflict seems to be something that is less welcomed. It isn't something that's trained. It isn't something that is especially not embraced.
It's not engineered. It's not engineered into the structure,
or even trained into. I mean, I feel like it's not. Like people should be taught how to enter into conflict in a healthy way, but we don't, because most families probably don't do it well. Either somebody blows up, and the other person cowers. Or both people are passive aggressive and never really talk it out. All kinds of different ways to handle what could be conflict, but we're never really modeled that in a positive way. I'll say for me, at least, I have been born a challenger. I have always challenged institutions, authorities, and whatnot, and it's gotten me in trouble. It has even lost me friendships. And also it's deepened friendships, oddly enough. But with Rachel and me, definitely we before we got engaged, I mean, we were fighting like crazy.
Wow.
And then after that, we in our marriage, we continued to fight. But now it's been amazing. Our fights are definitely far less, heated or violent. They weren't violent, but you know what I mean? Like, as it really like anger, the anger doesn't get as crazy as it used to. And now it's definitely, we're both trying to accommodate each other. We understand each other, but we also still disagree, and we still tell each other when we're angry at the other person.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think, at least in the institution of marriage, I think it is baked in there saying, you're not supposed to be divided unless you die or something else, somebody betrays the relationship or something like that. Right.
Right.
But the whole thing about training. But I would say that this week, it's been interesting between us, you and me, fighting it out, duking it out about Trump and about my words about Biden.
Right.
Right.
Look, I don't think we're arguing about Trump because we both are very clear that we both are not fans.
Yeah.
I think that this is more about an interpretation of, let's just,
give the context
out there. Yeah. And we'll link the post in the show notes. John, actually it was last week. Last week, John published a post, a follow-up to the Trump-Biden, the first Trump-Biden debate, and presidential debate, and John's perspective was that Biden was a disappointment, and that's what his post was about. It was really that we expect more from you, we demand more from you. You disappointed me. This is John, and we that was the basis.
That was the stance.
And that was the stance. And for a variety of his responses or non-responses to Trump were just putting his positions out there. Yeah. And I disagreed very much.
Yeah.
And I posted something on you posted that on your Facebook page. Then a few other people agreed with you, and I got in and tried to balance all that with one screaming post. It was definitely a strongly worded post, and I really and my perspective was that, and I'm not going to get into the whole details of it. Yeah. I'll let people interpret it for themselves. My perspective is that you couldn't, if your complaint was that Biden couldn't get. Biden wasn't clear about his message and lowered himself when he said, "Shut up, man." And, I think he made two little zingers like that. Yeah. And my perspective was, there's really a debate is a terrible place to sort of broadcast your policies. You go to the website for that. I don't know what the debate is for. It's ridiculous, and nobody is.
I don't think it's ridiculous. I think it's great. I think I personally.
It's not a debate. It's not a debate. It's
not anymore. I don't think
it's right.
Yeah, they're talking. Whatever they're talking about.
Lincoln and Douglas
talking to each other.
Right, they're talking at each other, and this one was particularly terrible.
Oh, they weren't even talking at each other at all.
And my perspective was that I've seen Joe Biden debate numerous times with others, and it's always been on a civil level. And this time, I think Trump really got under his skin. Yeah. And my perspective is that I could understand that. And you can't, and really I just said, you can't get your points across with someone just blowing a trumpet in your ear. And that's really what Trump was doing. He was just interrupting, of course, lying and doing everything. And your perspective was, that's just Trump being Trump. And that's when I saw red. You said, that's just Trump being Trump. Well, I think that what to me, it was like you were trying to and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but to me, it felt like you were trying to calm me down. Like you're trying.
No, it's not trying to calm. Yeah.
It felt like you were like, oh, that's just Trump being Trump.
No, that's not my point at all.
And I know. This is how I felt. I'm not speaking for John.
Okay, yeah.
You said that's just Trump being Trump. Joe Biden, we expect more from you. And so I was like, okay, so you're setting two standards. One standard is that a very low one for Trump because Trump is just being Trump. But Joe needs to be the adult in the room. Joe needs to be at a higher level. And I think there's a certain amount of truth to that pisses me off.
Why?
And that went because I think that Donald Trump is the president of the United States.
Yeah.
And we should not have to instruct him to be civil and to be to follow the rules that he agreed to, that his team agreed to, the debate format, and 2 minutes, no interruptions.
Yeah.
Pretty simple. Not a whole lot of rules there.
Yeah.
In fact, so little rules that the moderators are prohibited from, muting their mic, the two parties' mics.
Yeah.
They can't do it. They can't mute the candidates' mics because there's this expectation that the interruptions will be minimal.
Well, these men can actually control themselves enough to actually not talk during the
right. But I do think, it was my perspective that Joe Biden was controlling himself in the only way that you could you can't just sit there and let someone talk over you the whole time. Eventually, you're just going to say, "Shut up, man." And I think that was perfectly reasonable to say that. What's interesting is the guy that I also kind of attacked, another guy on your page. Who, we'll keep his name quiet because I don't need to drag him into it. But he was he was quite a nice guy, I'm sure, at a kind of reasonable. He was. Yeah. He thought that the comment was, "Shut up, man," was a highlight of the evening. I don't agree with that. I think it was kind of one of the low points, but not for the reasons that you thought that it was one of the low points. It was, and so I kind of jumped on this guy who posted, and I was jumping on everyone, and then
not in a good way.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I haven't jumped on anyone in a good way in a long time. It's like, I felt like we're at a crucial moment in our discourse. Not you and me, but the national discourse. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I really felt like that record had to be clarified. And that's where our arguments are, because I can feel it as I say it. I can even feel it now. Like I'm dancing around the subject because so John and I'm talking a lot here, but I'll finish up. John and I took a walk to kind of talk while John apparently wanted to talk about it. I was more than happy not to talk about it at all. I was like, let's talk about submarines. Let's talk about camping. Let's talk about
I can't let something like that. We got to put it out there.
We got half a blog and you're like, okay, so what happened with the post? Like, and, thank you for doing that. By the way, that's one of the things
made our friendship better, I think.
I love that about you.
Yeah, thank you.
And you, so, but that's fine. We can talk about it, and we talked about it, and that's all we talked about. And we kept, the thing is, then what you notice that it kind of rehashes. Like you weren't going to convince me. Yeah. I wasn't going to convince you. Yeah. So all we're doing is
we chipped away. We chipped away a little bit.
We came to and yes, I think that's exactly right. Yeah. It wasn't about convincing me that I was wrong. It wasn't about me convincing you that you were wrong. It was about seeing our way, trusting a friend's judgment, and just kind of letting, like, okay, you drive. You're driving this one, and I trust you. I trust you.
Or at least I can see where you're coming from. I may not agree, but I think that is one of the secrets to real relationship and friendship, or whatever it is, where you can go, okay, I may not agree with you completely, but you know what? There are points you're making that are spot on, and I might be wrong in some of those points. You may not change the core of my argument right now. Maybe it will, after time it will, or maybe it will morph into something completely different. But there was a sense of, I think, of shaping each other's thinking somewhat. And it was, I thought it was very positive for me.
I agree. I think it was positive. I felt much better after our conversation. But what was interesting is that it kept going, which I think is okay. You keep working at it. You keep working at it. It's almost like you're making a sculpture or a painting. You go one pass, you do another pass, and you shape it another pass. And it forms into something that you both mutually appreciate. And that's really, that's the sense that I got of that walk, which I really appreciated. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you.
But the truth is, it's never a good thing to say, "Oh, shut up, man," to someone. It is never the best thing that you can say to someone. I will give you that. I will give you that.
And so that's what's interesting is that what I took away from it was I think when two people are willing to give each other enough benefit of the doubt that the other human has a good perspective, I think we both not just see
A
each other as
valid
humans,
perspective. Yep.
yeah, that we respect each other and love each other, and we could go, okay, like, I can see through this other person's eyes and be
Mhm.
like, okay, yes, totally valid perspective. I even, to a large degree, can not just understand it, but I would almost want to agree with it.
Mhm.
And then at the same time, like, I have my own perspective.
Yep.
And for some reason, the former just doesn't happen as much as the latter. And I think what's great about conflict is that, you know, you can actually, that is where the magic sauce happens, where our thinking stops becoming siloed, and we're
Yeah.
able to have an echo with another voice, and we
Right.
start to meld something into a new thought, which is obviously one of the major problems in our national discourse, is that we're
Yeah.
all siloed, and we're not
We're all
having any
silent.
kind of
And the thing is
discourse.
that you're exactly right. So yeah, so it forces, what I like what you just said. It forces me to think, to consider your position, because I'm invested in our friendship. I want it to grow and
Yeah,
continue.
yeah, likewise.
Some guy online,
Yeah,
I don't really have any investment in him. I can't, I don't know who
no
this is.
trust. Yeah,
No trust. There's nothing to lose. When
yeah,
nothing to lose, it's like, and that's terrible.
yeah,
This person is disposable
yeah.
because I don't have, because this, we're never intended to have these digital connections like that. It really does mess with the brain, I think. So it is easy to dehumanize a person to just their little round avatar, and their little name underneath it. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, you try to glean a little bit of, who is this person? You might even look at their profile and go, oh, you're looking for, scrolling on. Oh, there's the fucking Confederate flag there.
Of
Oh,
course, of course.
pickup truck. I see the pickup truck. Oh my God. And to me, that's, and I think that's what
Oh
it is.
yeah,
We find these little clues to
yeah. We
people.
stereotype people.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
put them in their little buckets and believe that that's all they are.
It's all shorthand. It's easy. It's
Yeah,
easy to do. It's like check the box and move on. And they,
yeah,
they'll be in. I don't need this person because I've got someone else.
yeah,
But there's a problem, is that when you start arguing with someone who you're close with, and now you're like, oh, I want to dispose of this person, but I don't want to dispose of this person. But they're both sort of in the same space, and it really creates some uncomfortable,
Oh
discomfort.
yeah. So
Yeah.
so what is it? Why would you be less? What caused you? So if I didn't bring it up, you weren't wanting to bring it up. What makes you kind of shy away from that? Because I would imagine I'm majority of people probably feel that way.
Yeah.
I just happen to be the I was about to say narcissistic, but that's not the right word.
Mm.
The masochist,
Right.
who's willing to put himself
Right.
in harm's way. What is it about that, and I think that's just so that we can at least flesh out your perspective
Right.
on it, about that. What is it that causes you to, I'm not gonna, let's just talk about anything else.
I think humans constantly do risk benefit analysis. I just think that's just what being a human, that's what doing anything is.
Hmm.
It's risk reward,
Hmm.
risk reward. And some people have higher risk tolerances. Some people have lower risk tolerance. I'm very conservative. We've had this conversation for
Oh, yeah.
years now, right?
Yeah,
Years. I mean, that's
yeah.
really, until we had our first big fight. It was really about, oh, Howard, why are you so conservative? Why don't you just do? I have taken risks, but
Yeah.
I could take more. And so this, I think, is a manifestation of that. I think that's really what it is. It's like, okay, I have this friendship. I don't want to make it worse.
Yeah.
I don't want to piss him off more. I don't want to
Yeah.
start. No, I don't want to be out of control, and I don't want to, like, all of a sudden be like, all of a sudden, F you, you walk away and I walk away, and that was the last podcast.
Yeah,
And,
yeah.
I mean, that's, because I think we have, deep down, we all have, I'm going to get like Freudian here, but we all have fear
Yeah.
of abandonment.
Sure.
fear of being rejected,
Yeah.
fear. And I think that you kind of described it in a previous episode where we were talking about, I think it was fear, or no, it was relationships. We're talking about relationships, and you said that you would actually leave,
Yeah.
you know, because you wanted to strike first. You wanted to be, and
Oh, right. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting. And, so I do think that it's really about not wanting to risk, not wanting to go there. I don't want to go there to that place.
Or have that chance of that.
Yeah. But it's there. It's there anyway, but that's a different subject here.
Yeah.
How about you? I mean, isn't that like what made you want to jump in?
I don't know what it is, but I've always been I've always been the type of person who I can't handle that type of that kind of dissonance, like relational dissonance that I know is there.
Right. That heavy atmosphere that just floats in, and the clouds that are in there.
No.
Like you can't talk about movies and stuff around.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. It's there.
I just can't. I've never been that person. I think I grew up in a high conflict home. My mom is she I don't even know how to describe it. But there was a lot of conflict between me and my mother. It just,
you funnel it.
Oh, dude.
Yelled a lot?
Yelled. I mean, yeah, she wouldn't hear it. Like she was a very conflict avoidant person. And so she would never let me clear the way, like clear the air. Oh, dude, it was just, build up, blow up, all kinds of stuff. And so, so I think in my relationship, and I wasn't like, yelling at you like that. I just wanted to, let's talk about this. Let's get it out.
Oh yeah. No, you were completely, civil, and there was no like, it was never super heated, our conversation.
No. It was great. I was really appreciative of how
I was too. I think that was like the great gift of that walk was when you brought it up. I was like, okay, we're going to do this. And I was like, good, let's just put it out there.
Yeah.
And because one thing's for sure, it won't feel worse. It may feel worse acutely, but in the long term, I think it feels
better. I felt stronger. I felt the relationship was even better afterwards.
Yeah. But you never know, because there's that little risk.
True. You never know.
You never know. And that's the thing. And that's where you grow. I think that's what you were saying earlier. Like that moment, I think that's important. There's no word. The Germans, they have a word for everything. They have a word for it. I wonder if they have a word for that. That moment where you're, there's some conflict.
That was signaling. Yeah, signaling to my son. Remember, I'm podcasting over here, my son. I can hear you yelling at your screen.
But there's that little tiny moment where you're, where you don't know where this conversation is going.
It's true.
It's like I have to walk this line, and I may have that conversation with Kelly where we're in conflict, or with my mom, or with my, my sister, or whatever. It's like, what could happen? How far could I go in? And I don't know their tolerance. So I may cross over the line, and it's not worth it. So I'm just I'll talk about it later, or and I think and I just think I'm sure the Germans have a word for it. That have a word for it. It's just that moment where you're on that precipice of argument.
Yeah. And go ahead.
That's all.
Oh, and I think that fear of abandonment and fear of the uncertainty of where the conversation will lead the relationship. I think I have it. I know, because I don't know where this conversation. All I know is I'm entering into it, and but I think
we all have it.
The only thing you can control is how you respond to the person as it unfolds. And so for me, I was like this. I'm not going to get angry at him. I love this man. I'm not going to get angry at him. I'm just going to explain myself, and I'm going to listen to what he has to say, and maybe I can learn something. And I thought just those things, to have that posture, and then that was it. Like I didn't have a goal of winning. I didn't want to win. But that one thought, not wanting to win, that was a very evolutionary thought for me.
That's huge. I
I had to
wonder
learn
if I had that thought. I don't even know if I had that thought. Without winning, it's like, can I win him over? Not can I win? Can I win? Can I get him to abandon his
his terrible
retract?
stance.
And that was one of those things, like, retract the post.
Yeah.
Just retract the damn post and it'll be fine. And you're like, no, I'm not doing that. And I'm like, then give me your damn password.
Yeah. I'm going to hack your computer, your website. I'm going to take down that post myself.
Yeah, no. But yeah, it was not, but that's not, surprisingly. And that's kind of what I'm saying about earlier. It's like, we're not really, it was a late, for you personally, it was a late evolutionary point that, and me too. It's like, I'm not comfortable with that. And I'd love to be more comfortable with that, but that's not part of the relationship blueprint.
No.
And why it's so huge too. It's like, why isn't conflict management really the first thing we learn? I mean, we learn it, but we kind of learn it sideways,
Yeah. I mean, families, it's got to be in family. I mean, I'm glad that my kids are, because I didn't learn any of this stuff. I mean, as a kid, like, nobody taught me, hey, this is how you talk to people when they hurt you, or when you're angry at them, or you feel disrespected. Nobody, I mean, I don't know any family that does that. But I will say that, we're trying to do it here with our kids. Like, it's like, I'm not doing it perfectly at all. I mean, there are times I get angry at Blaze and it just, but the thing is, I have to say I'm sorry, especially when I'm ultra wrong. Doesn't matter I'm dad or not. Like, I'm hoping he's picking these things up, but I just don't know. There are whole cultures that avoid conflict. And I think of especially like Koreans, like a lot of Korean friends, and they often grow up in families where there's not conflict. But I wouldn't even say that. And also in
or they grow up to be co-pilots who crash their planes into the sea.
Exactly. Yes. I mean, what book was that in? Was that?
I think it's like the
Malcolm Gladwell book.
The classics. Yeah, I think it was a classic story of the Malcolm Gladwell. I think it was Blink or one of those where the pilot, the Korean.
Yeah, JFK, right?
Yeah, and I don't know. I think everyone's heard the story.
Yeah.
Find it and maybe link it.
But also middle class or upper class white people. Like there's
Absolutely.
very little conflict. You just kind of do.
Well, don't you think that's where, like, obey your husband comes from? That whole patriarchal thing.
No, I don't think so.
I think that's where it comes from.
I think
it's
so.
like it's there to keep the conflict down by establishing that one person is right by is just God-given correct, and it's like, wow.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, yes, that is probably that plays a role in it. I think that the church and the religious, not just the church, but religion can play a role. But I think that's more tradition than the source. If you talk about the source code or the source of like biblical knowledge, because you look at, Old Testament, New Testament. I'm not going to necessarily talk about other, but the people, they argued with each other. They argue that the teachers argue with the students,
Yes.
Students argue with the teachers, the parents would argue with the kids, and vice versa. Even in Jewish culture, it's very there's a lot of discourse and disagreements within family between generations.
Yeah,
and I think that's
absolutely.
one of the things I love about about the culture. And it's also in Chinese culture. There's a lot of arguments, a lot of people who talk back. However, there's also, but even in China, there is that hierarchy. There, especially in Korea, but there is that hierarchy, and you're working within an infrastructure of relationships that is sometimes hard to break through.
The hierarchy imposes a level of assumed you're right.
Authority becomes assumed right.
Yeah, authority becomes right, and authority doesn't inoculate you against being
wrongness.
Exactly. As we know, we've learned that. We're learning that every day. And just because you have the top job doesn't mean you're right. So, but what's interesting, I think you said something just a moment ago, and you're referencing your son Blaze, is that when you can be right. So there's two rights and two wrongs opportunities for right and wrong too with every argument. There's the argument itself, the content. You're either right or wrong. We can argue that the sky is blue. No, the sky is purple. Okay, that's an argument.
Right.
But then there's the right and wrong of the way we manage that argument.
Yeah.
And to me, that's more important.
Yeah.
Because we have very little influence over the color of this green sky.
Yeah.
It is, but we do have control, as you said, over how we're going to manage that argument.
Yeah. How we're going to manage ourselves even.
And it's so much more important. It's so much more important. And I think that's where our country is right now. We've lost that distinction as we've blended that right and wrong, those two rights and wrongs into one. It's like and that's really where you get if you ignore that to your peril, what you'll end with is violence.
Yeah.
You'll end up with
war.
You're back to civil war. That's my concerns. You're this culture that's like, Trump is right. No, Trump is wrong. And then you fight it out to see who's right. Well, that has nothing to do. That just has to do with who can beat up who. It has nothing to do with Trump being right or wrong about a tax, policy.
Yeah, and we have just made caricatures of people, just as you mentioned earlier, that if they have a pickup truck and they work in construction, then therefore they must be whatever, or if they are a professor, wear a mask, or a professor somewhere, then they must be such and such, whatever it is. We all have these caricatures of each other that are just broadly brushed strokes of ideas about a person without actually thinking, well, each person, yes, there might be truths about those caricatures, but we don't know the nuances and the subtleties of who they are. And we could learn from them. This person who watches Fox News versus, CNN, I could still learn something from them. Or they have a certain perspective, and maybe I don't agree with everything, but there may be some things that I could glean from that perspective.
Exactly. But the shorthand, the way that this information just comes to us, we get, how many conversations do we have with people all day long? And they're one way. I can't argue with Kayleigh McEnany. It's a one-way thing. She's got the platform, and I'm the one who can kind of respond to my little bit of,
You can't tweet to her. You can't tweet her and tell her I disagree with you.
Oh, and I do. She never responds.
But I will say this. I think that we all have those feelings where there is potential conflict, or where we disagree with somebody that we know, that we can reach out to, that we feel like, oh my gosh, I need to have a discussion with them, not to pick a fight, but to make something right, to make the relationship more right. And I think that too many of us forego those opportunities to actually deepen the relationship. And I think that, if we're going to issue any challenge in this episode, would be to actually have those conversations and learn how to control yourself in that conversation, or manage the conflict, as Howard was saying. And I think you'll be surprised at what you'll find will happen from that conversation, from that conflict. Howard and I, we didn't get heated.
No.
But there was disagreement. Like we were at one point, some points sharply disagreeing with each other. We weren't yelling, but
I remember getting a few sharp looks, like, whoa, touch nerve. You definitely have a death stare. You've got this, like, it's like, whoa. But I do believe that you maybe start with small ones if you're not comfortable with conflict. Start with the small ones, the little nothing arguments. Don't go with,
Don't go big.
You don't have to go big. Just, pick a small area of disagreement, even if it's over what to have for dinner, or, how you load the dishwasher. And, well, that can be a really big one. And I guess that's I hear from married people. And but I do think that there's value in that, and because it's a skill. It's a skill to suppress the content of the argument
Yeah.
and focus then on, because it's easy to dig in and dismiss the person.
Yes.
But that's really just sort of a, a slash and burn approach,
Yeah.
but if you want to the key is to argue and maintain the relationship.
Yes.
Just like in business, it's like, it's easy to enforce your policies, your policy. Someone comes in to call these coffee houses, happen all the time. People come in, bring a bag of potato chips and a sandwich from some place up the street, wherever, like, dude, what you can't eat that in here. Get out. Okay, that's easy. I can throw someone out.
Right.
But I want to keep the customer. Ideally, even if they're not a customer of mine, they're just using my space. I want to keep that customer. And how do you do that? How do we maintain that relationship?
How did you do that?
Well, sometimes better than others. If I was tired, if I was, not in the mind frame for that, I would throw them out and justify it by saying, well, they're not a customer. They're just, eating someone else's food here.
Yeah.
The other one would be the other way. At my best, I was able to explain to them that we have kitchen staff that work very hard and take great pride in their work, and our restaurant. This is a vegetarian restaurant too, called These Doors Vegetarian. And you come in here with a burger. It's there's something wrong with that, and explain that to them, and usually they get it. Usually you advance your argument, the substance of your argument, much better by recognizing the humanity and trying to preserve the relationship. But it's hard because you get, why is that we want to just go fight? We want to anger is so much easier to grab than empathy, or it's just anger is so easy. It's just such a colorful, shiny, sparkling go-to.
Yeah, it's like a rock rolling down a hill. Doesn't take much.
It doesn't take much, but it takes work to. Oh, now I got to recognize their humanity.
I gotta actually treat them well.
Treat them like a human being in order for them to see my position. I'm like, no, I just throw their ass out.
I just start yelling.
I just get that. And maybe I'll even get some applause from the people around. That's like the next level. It's like,
ironically, that's what I think Trump loves. That's what somebody like Trump loves that. And I think that's where we are. That's where when we start losing our tempers and doing that type of stuff. And I'm not saying Trump is like the devil. That's not my point. But I think that characteristic of reveling in the destruction and letting that anger destroy, which I have a ton of anger. I've written a blog post about it. I have a ton of anger. But having decades of trying to manage my own destructive nature, it is really hard. And
it's not a straight line up. It's like
definitely dips, a lot of dipping,
and every one of those dips is disappointment.
Yes.
You disappoint yourself.
Disappoint your friends, disappoint your family. Absolutely.
Right.
So what, closing this thing up, what's the last thought that you would add to our audience to make them kind of walk away thinking?
Well, I do think that even this is hard for me to say, but what I want to believe is that everybody who takes the time to comment online, regardless of their perspective, regardless of their political perspective, they do it because they care about the system, they care about the situation, or they have a legitimate, maybe irrational in my mind, but a legitimate fear of something. And if you can get to someone's fear, it's really difficult to dismiss someone's humanity when you're trying to understand their fear.
Yeah.
Because fear is something fear is not a comfortable place to be.
No.
When I wanted to feel, I was tired of, when Trump was sick in the hospital, I was feeling so angry and so it's been a terrible, couple weeks. And and I was so angry with him. And what the only thing that helped me was to think about this man being afraid.
Mm.
He's afraid that he's talked about many times about how he's afraid of germs, how he's afraid of hospitals, afraid of sick. So he's got to be scared to death. I'm imagining them holding him down, or they're trying to shove a swab up his nose. You know, who knows? You know what was going through his crocodile brain, and it made me at least recognize his humanity, not for him, but for me, so that I could come down from that sort of high angry place, low angry place, wherever that is. Whatever it is, it's a very lonely place to be really angry. And so that's my point is, look to the deeper part of where your opponent is. Where is it coming from? Is it coming from a place of fear? Is it coming from a place of, of trauma? Those are the places where that are the origins of these, of so much of the stuff that makes me angry out there and online and in the real world. That's what I think. I think it's just find that common emotion.
Yeah, it's great. That's great. That's a great thought. Just one, I think, thing would be, when you take risks in your relationship, there are usually great rewards. And I think that, just as you and I have found in the last week, we've been friends for a very long time and had a lot of different conversations and even disagreements. But even so, you can reach a even deeper depth. And trust, and a greater trust with someone after conflict. And I think that anybody can gain that experience and understanding. And I think there's plenty of shallow relationships that we have in our lives. By taking some risks, by having some conflict, you can find a similar or the same or even better experience of having something that has a deeper sense of knowing and intimacy with another human being by entering the conflict. I think that can often only be born through conflict, ironically.
So conflict is a gift. It's an opportunity to deepen your relationship. It's an invitation to deepen your relationship. It is not something to run away from. It's not something to reject. It is a way to show your vulnerability, to invite yourself into someone else's vulnerability, and to share a moment. I think that's huge value. Don't waste a good argument.
Don't waste it. And one little tactical thing, the same thing I did with Howard actually, to enter is just to ask a simple question, and then stop and don't say anything.
What the fuck is your problem?
That's not
I didn't
how
hear
I
that.
started.
You didn't ask. No. That was a simple question. I didn't hear you ask that. I think I asked you a few times. You didn't answer. Still waiting.
Anyway, but pleasure, Howard. Great talking. This was particularly.
Hold on. What was the simple question?
You can any simple question. I'm just saying whatever it is, because I asked you. So what did you think about the post?
Right. That was what it started. It was
just a simple question.
And it wasn't,
you knew exactly what it meant.
Right. It was a signal. It was like, yeah, we're on. And but you did it in a way that wasn't an attack. It wasn't biased. It was a very neutral question.
Yeah. And make it a very matter-of-fact way. Just ask the question.
So, yeah.
Hey, what do you think
so much of that question framed the rest of the conversation.
Exactly.
That's another thing.
It's because when you ask a question, you seek to understand.
Curiosity. Approach conflict with curiosity instead of
exactly.
Right. Love it.
Yeah. So.
All right.
Great talking.
Sweet. Great talking. Yeah.
And feel free to comment. Love to hear from you guys.
Yeah.
Reach us. You can email. What's the email again? Howard and John show.
Howard and John.
Yeah. No, I think it's
Howard
you said that. I think it's a Howard and John
was
show.
Wrong last time.
Yeah, it was terrible. Anyway, so feel free to reach out to us. We'll put a link in the show notes. And if you have conflict or conflict questions, we'd love to talk to you about them. And maybe we'll disagree about them.
Yeah.
But next week, Howard.
Next week.
Great seeing you.
Take care, John. Bye.
Bye.
See you.